These are true stories people sent me, and they still don't make sense. This first story was sent in by someone named Daniel, and he said it happened about a year ago. He had just moved into his first place, a small 2-story house in a quiet area where nothing ever happened. He was 25 at the time, living alone, and the only part of the house he didn't like was the basement. It wasn't finished, it wasn't cozy. It was more like a big concrete room with random shelves, old wiring, and one bare light bulb that made everything look yellow. Daniel said he didn't even use the basement for anything except storage. Holiday decorations, old clothes, boxers he didn't want to unpack, stuff like that. One night, he came home from work later than usual. It was dark, cold, and he was exhausted. He microwaved leftovers, sat on the couch, and started watching YouTube. And that's when he heard it, a soft bump coming from below him. At first, he ignored it. Houses make noises, pipes shift, wood expands and contracts. But then it happened again, and this time, it sounded closer, like it came from the bottom of the basement stairs. Daniel muted the TV and listened. Silence. He waited maybe 20 seconds, then unmuted the TV again. Another sound hit right after. This one was different. It wasn't a bump. It was the sound of something sliding, like plastic being dragged across concrete. Daniel stood up slowly. He told himself it was probably a box falling over. Maybe something shifted on a shelf. So he grabbed his phone and walked to the basement door. When he opened it, the smell coming up from downstairs instantly made him uncomfortable. The basement air smelled fresh, like someone had been down there recently. Daniel turned his phone flashlight on and walked down the stairs. The basement light switch was at the bottom, but he didn't turn it on. Something about walking into that room felt wrong. The phone beam hit the concrete floor, then the shelves, then the big open space near the laundry machines, and that's when he stopped, because one of his storage bins was in the middle of the floor. He knew it wasn't there earlier. It was a big gray bin with a red lid, and it had been stacked with the others against the wall. Now it was sitting by itself, like someone had pulled it out and left it there. Daniel stared at it for a few seconds without moving, and then he heard a sound behind him, not downstairs, behind him on the stairs, like a foot shifting. Daniel spun around so fast, his phone light shook wildly. Nothing was there. The stairs behind him were empty, but he still felt like he wasn't alone. He turned back toward the basement and forced himself to keep walking. He didn't want to be the guy who freaks out over nothing. He approached the bin, and that's when he noticed something even worse. The lid wasn't fully on. It was cracked open, like someone had looked inside. Daniel slowly lifted the lid the rest of the way, and inside the bin were items that didn't belong to him. A crumpled hoodie, a half-empty water bottle, and a small, dirty pillow. Daniel didn't even process it at first. He just stood there staring, trying to understand how that could be possible. Then he heard the basement door upstairs close. Not slam, close, like someone pulled it shut gently. Daniel's blood turned ice cold, because he didn't do that. Daniel ran for the stairs. He didn't even care about being quiet anymore. But halfway up, his phone flashlight flickered and shut off. His phone battery died. Everything went black. Daniel froze on the steps, gripping the railing so hard his hand hurt, and in the darkness, he heard breathing, slow, calm, coming from the basement floor behind him. A voice spoke, barely above a whisper. "Don't turn around." Daniel said every instinct he had screamed at him to run, so he did. He sprinted up the remaining steps, shoved the basement door open, and stumbled into the kitchen. He locked the basement door and backed away, shaking. Then he called 911. When police arrived, they searched his entire basement, and they found a forced window in the far corner partially open. They also found more evidence that someone had been living down there. Food wrappers, a blanket behind the shelves, and worst of all, a small pile of Daniel's mail, open, like whoever it was had been reading it. The police told him it was probably some transient who found an easy place to hide, but Daniel didn't buy it, because of what the voice said. Don't turn around. It didn't sound like a homeless person begging not to get caught. It sounded like someone enjoying it. Daniel moved out less than 2 weeks later. The second story was sent in by someone named Maya. She said she was 16 when this happened, and she still hates basements because of it. Her parents had a finished basement, but there was one back corner that was unfinished, just concrete walls and exposed pipes. That corner had a little door, too. Not a full door, more like a wooden panel. Her dad told her it was just access for wiring, and she never questioned it. One night, Maya was home alone. Her parents went out for dinner and told her they'd be back around 10. She was in the basement watching TV because it was the only room with the big screen. At around 9:20, she heard a tapping sound. 3 taps, then silence. She paused the TV and listened. Nothing. She told herself it was pipes. Then the tapping happened again. 3 taps, same rhythm, same place. It wasn't random. It sounded like it came from inside the wall near that wooden panel. Maya stood up slowly, staring at it. Then the tapping became scratching. Slow, dragging scratches, like fingernails. Maya grabbed her phone and texted her mom to come home. No response. Then her basement lights flickered once and turned off. The TV stayed on, but the lights were out. And in the darkness, Maya heard the wooden panel creak, like someone was pushing it from the other side. Maya ran up the stairs. She didn't even stop to grab anything. She locked herself in the bathroom upstairs and called her dad. He answered immediately. And while she was talking, she heard the basement door open. Footsteps on the stairs, slow, heavy, like someone was coming up. Maya held her breath in the bathroom with her phone against her ear. The footsteps stopped in the hallway, right outside the bathroom door, and then silence. Her dad told her to stay locked in until they got home. When her parents arrived, they searched the basement. The wooden panel was slightly open. Inside was a crawl space, and inside that crawl space, they found muddy footprints, fresh, leading toward the back of the house. Police came. They never found anyone, but her dad sealed that crawl space up permanently. And for months after, Maya said she'd hear tapping from that wall at night, even with it sealed. This last story is short, but it's one of the creepiest. A guy named Chris sent it in. He said his basement had a door that led outside to the backyard. One night, he heard the handle turning. Not fast, slow, like someone testing it. Then a voice, calm and quiet, said, "I know you're in there." Chris said he didn't answer. He just backed away, and the voice whispered again, closer this time. "I'll wait." He called police. They found nobody outside, but the next morning, there were footprints in the frost, right up to the basement door, and then back into the woods. I still check the window every night. This next story was sent in by someone named Carla, and she said it happened last winter when she was house sitting for her aunt. Her aunt lived in an older home, the kind that looked normal from the outside, but felt oddly quiet inside. Carla said the house was spotless, almost too clean, and the basement door was right off the kitchen. Her aunt warned her about the basement too, not in a dramatic way. She just said, "Don't go down there unless you really need to." Carla assumed she meant because the stairs were steep or the basement was unfinished. The first 2 days were completely normal. She watched movies, ordered food, scrolled on her phone, nothing strange at all. Then on the third night, around 11:40 p.m., she was getting ready to sleep when she noticed something small. The kitchen light was on. She knew she turned it off. She stood in the hallway, staring at it for a second, trying to remember if she forgot. It felt possible, but she was almost sure she didn't. So she walked out, flicked the switch off, and went back to bed. 10 minutes later, the kitchen light came back on. This time, she felt her stomach drop. She walked back to the doorway again and stared into the kitchen. Everything looked normal. Nothing had moved. No shadows, no shapes. But then she noticed something else. The basement door was cracked open, and she knew it was closed earlier. Not wide open, just enough to see the black line between the frame and the door. Carla said she didn't even breathe. She stood there, frozen, listening. At first, there was nothing. Then, a soft sound rose up from below. Not footsteps, not talking. It sounded like someone slowly dragging something across concrete. Carla did what most people would do. She convinced herself it had to be something harmless. Maybe the water heater kicked on. Maybe a pipe shifted. Maybe a rat knocked something over. So she walked closer to the basement door. The air near the doorway felt colder. Not just basement cold either. It felt like someone had opened a freezer. She placed her hand on the doorknob. It was icy. Her aunt kept the house warm. There was no reason that knob should feel like that. Carla opened the door a little wider. Instantly, she smelled it. A damp, dusty smell, mixed with something sour, like wet clothes left too long. She kept the door halfway open and leaned forward. The stairs were steep and narrow, and the darkness at the bottom looked thick, like it swallowed light. That's when she saw it. A faint glow coming from down there. It wasn't bright. It was just enough to show a shape. Carla squinted, trying to understand what she was looking at. Then she realized. Someone had plugged in a lamp in the basement, and it was on. Carla whispered out loud without meaning to. "Hello?" The dragging sound stopped. Silence. She waited. Nothing. So her brain did that thing where it tries to protect you. It tells you you're overreacting. Maybe her aunt forgot the lamp on. Maybe it's always like that. So Carla stepped down one stair, then another. The air got colder with every step, and at the bottom, she saw what was glowing. It was a small lamp placed on a plastic folding table, and sitting next to it was an old full-length mirror. Carla hadn't seen that mirror anywhere in the house upstairs. It was facing the stairs, like it was placed there. To watch whoever came down, Carla stared into it, and her reflection stared back. For a second, she actually felt relieved, because nothing was behind her. Nothing was moving. Just her and the mirror. So she turned around, ready to go back upstairs. And that's when she saw something that made her entire body lock up. The mirror reflection didn't match reality. In real life, behind Carla was an empty basement. But in the mirror, behind her shoulder, there was a shape. A person dot standing in the darkest corner near the storage shelves. It was tall dot too still. And the worst part, it wasn't facing her. It was facing the mirror, like it was watching her from inside it. Carla couldn't even scream. Her throat tightened so hard she made no sound at all. She turned her head slowly toward the corner and saw nothing. Empty dot, just shelves and boxes. But when she looked back at the mirror, the figure was closer now. So close she could see an outline of shoulders, a head dot, and the suggestion of a face. But it was blurry, like the mirror couldn't fully show it. That's when Carla finally snapped out of it. She ran up the stairs so fast, she almost fell. She slammed the basement door shut and shoved a kitchen chair under the handle. Then she grabbed her phone and called her aunt. Her aunt answered sleepy, confused. Carla tried to explain everything at once, crying while she talked. And her aunt didn't ask questions. She didn't say you're imagining things. She only said one sentence. "Don't look in the mirror again." Carla whispered, "What?" Her aunt repeated it. "Don't look in it?" Carla asked what was in the basement. Her aunt paused for a long time, then said, "It's not supposed to be turned toward the stairs." Before Carla could say anything else, there was a loud thump under her feet. Something hit the basement door. Once, hard, then again and again, like someone was throwing their whole body into it. Carla ran to the front door, barefoot, and sat in her car until morning. When her aunt got home later, the lamp and mirror were gone, and the basement door was wide open. This last story was sent in by someone named Marcus. He said this happened when he lived in an apartment building where the laundry room was in the basement. It wasn't one of those normal basements with bright lights and clean tiles. This basement was old. Concrete floors, buzzing fluorescent lights, pipes everywhere, and the air smelled like bleach and wet rust. Marcus said the laundry room had 2 washers, 2 dryers, and a folding table. That was it. And because it was shared laundry, he usually went down late at night when nobody else was there. One night, around 12:30 a.m., he carried his basket down and started a load. He set a timer on his phone for 35 minutes. Then he went back upstairs. But when his timer went off, he got distracted and waited a bit longer before going back down. So when he finally came downstairs, it was closer to 1:20 a.m. The lights were on, like usual, but something felt off immediately. The basement door was already open. It was normally shut, and the hallway down there sounded wrong. To quiet, no hum, no buzzing, like the lights were on, but the basement itself was holding its breath. He walked toward the laundry room, and that's when he noticed the first weird thing. His clothes were already out of the washer, folded neatly, and stacked on the table. Marcus stood there, staring like his brain didn't work, because he knew for a fact Nobody should have touched his stuff. And then he saw the second weird thing. His phone timer was reset. Not on his phone, on the wall. There was an old digital laundry timer in the room that was supposed to show machine time, and it was glowing with bright red numbers. 0:05. Counting down. 5 seconds left. Marcus didn't remember touching that timer. Then the numbers hit. 0 o'clock. And the basement lights shut off. Marcus stood there in complete darkness. He pulled his phone out immediately. Flashlight on. The beam hit the folding table. His clothes the machines, then the far wall. And that's when he noticed something he didn't notice before. There was writing on the concrete wall in chalk. It said, "I did it for you." Marcus felt his stomach twist because he was alone. He knew he was alone, so he laughed nervously and whispered to himself, "Okay, funny." He gathered his clothes as fast as he could, trying to keep calm, trying to move like it didn't bother him. That's when he heard the dryer door creak. He froze, because he wasn't touching it. It was the dryer across the room. The metal door slowly opened by itself with that squealing hinge sound. Then, a single sock dropped out, like someone had pushed it from inside. Marcus stared at the sock. It was his sock, but it was dry. He hadn't even put anything in the dryer yet. That's when he felt something else. A tiny gust of air on the back of his neck. Warm breath right behind him. And a voice whispered close to his ear, "I can't sleep down here alone." Marcus turned around so fast, he nearly fell. His flashlight beam shook violently across the room. Nothing. No one, just concrete and pipes. But as he backed toward the door, he saw movement. A shadow shifting behind the washing machine. Low to the ground, like something crouching. Marcus didn't stop. He ran. Marcus sprinted down the hallway to the basement stairs. But halfway there, the light above him flickered back on. The buzzing fluorescent sound returned. Everything looked normal again. For 1 second, Marcus actually felt stupid, like he had imagined it. So he slowed down, turned around, and looked back at the laundry room. The machines were running now, even though he never started them. And on the wall timer, the numbers were counting down again. 0:05, 0:04, 0:03. Marcus whispered, "No, no," because this time he saw it. Someone was standing in the laundry room doorway, not moving, not blinking, just a tall shape in the dark. The timer hit 0 o'clock. The lights shut off again, and the figure sprinted forward. Marcus ran up the stairs so fast, he slipped on the last step and hit his shoulder hard. But he didn't stop until he slammed his apartment door shut, and he stayed awake all night. The next morning, he called the building manager and demanded to check the basement cameras. The manager pulled up the footage, and Marcus said the most terrifying part wasn't the figure. It was that nobody ever entered the laundry room. Not once. Not before him. Not after him. But his clothes still showed up folded. And right before the lights went out, the camera caught something else. The washing machine lid lifting by itself, like a hand was inside.